Yo, what's good, y'all? This is Nappy Nina. You're listening to the Fly Fidelity podcast. My record Morning Dew is out now. Go check that out everywhere you can. I'll be coming to Europe, UK very soon. So I'll see y'all in October. Peace.
First I say, what we're gonna do. Then you say, I don't know, what do you want to do? What we're gonna do, what you want to do.
I have an idea.
You're gonna dig this.
The Fly Fidelity podcast
Is the solution. It's the best.
Check it out.
You wanna get super fly.
Details just ahead.
Do you love
credible content,
but hate?
How long you have to wait?
And who wants
super thick and frothy dumpster juice with rat corpses in it?
There's a better way.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity.
Fly.
Fly Fidelity.
Fidelity.
Fly Fidelity podcast.
Fly Fidelity, baby. Fidelity, baby. Fidelity.
With your host, Luke Bailey.
Welcome to the program. This week on Fly Fidelity, a conversation with Brooklyn-based Nappy Nina, in which we discuss her coming up in Oakland and the making of her latest album, Morning Dew. All of this and so much more on this episode. Enjoy the conversation.
I probably just give in, been in prayer posture, been sitting in, been paying homage to my buried kin, protected by them, they heckling when I'm questioning ends, enjoy the broke, shit won't last on some quarter notes, I may laugh but I'm hoarding hope, and reading my homies' horoscopes, I probably just give in, been in prayer posture, been sitting in, been paying homage to my buried kin, protected by them, heckling when I'm questioning ends, enjoy the broke, shit won't last on some quarter notes, I may laugh but I'm hoarding hope, and reading my homies' horoscopes.
Feeling kinda crazy now, trying to figure out my friends. I feel like the world's on fire, none of us know how to swim. Push back but I'm crazy now, trying to figure out my ends. Been out in the world for a while now, should probably learn how to swim. Feeling kinda crazy now.
I wanted to go back and talk about your journey from the top and talk about your evolution as an artist coming up in Oakland. Can you maybe share any turning points that helped establish your style and shape your identity in the beginning?
That's a big question, but I think when I think of Oakland and rap and my rap career in Oakland, I was in a group called the Newlyweds, which was led by my homie DJ N-Word, who was one of the first producers that I worked with in Oakland. And I feel like a turning point in my personal career was putting out a project with the Newlyweds and seeing that people were ready to listen to what we had to say, because previously I thought no one wanted to hear what we were making. So that was a big turning point for sure. And then just being able to collaborate with a lot of different artists in Oakland who I had been looking up to forever. Queen's Delight is one of those folks. And once I reached the level where I could start making really cool stuff with him, I felt really confident in my art.
Going back even further, you've mentioned in the past being turned on to poetry early. What would have been that moment that turned your practice as a poet into your practice as a rapper?
I don't know. I feel like they were always kind of intertwined. Even when I was writing poetry, I was listening to strictly hip hop, I would say. And my poems were a little more rhythmic than I think I was initially taught. So I think it was a smooth transition. It wasn't anything that was like, oh, now I'm a rapper. It was kind of just a smooth thing into here's the thing that I'm doing next. I think really what made it easy was just becoming friends with so many people who were producing. Because before that, I didn't really have any music to put what I was writing down to.
Now, if I said the words Youth Speaks workshops to you, what comes to mind first?
Yeah, Youth Speaks, man, shout out to the Speaks, where it all I got started. Not that I got started, but where I saw the possibility of performance and the possibility of workshopping your pieces and community and having folks who are all sort of like-minded trying to write. Those are the first spaces that I found myself doing that in. So shout out to them.
This idea of becoming an artist, at which point does that become a reality and a career for you? And how much of that drive comes from your dad as a journalist and radio host?
Hmm. When did that? I would say I had already lived in New York and I didn't really know what I was doing here. I was rapping, but not for anyone really besides myself. And I think I was just here and my friends were kind of just like, what are you doing? And I didn't, one of my friends who I reference all the time, Just Moni, who's on my last record, she was just like, you gonna rap for real or what? And I got super offended by the question. And I remember just like being upset and I was like, why would you ask me that? Like, that's crazy. And then I really thought about it and I was like, nah, but she has a point. Like, am I gonna take this seriously as a career? And I think in that moment, I was like, oh, this is actually something I can do. I think I just needed somebody to confirm that for me.
What was it that she pulled from you as an artist that you didn't see personally?
Man, I think just the confidence level to like be an artist out loud and in the face of everyone else. I could be an artist in my bedroom by myself and my close friends knowing forever and ever and ever. Um, but I think she was just kind of like, you should put your stuff out there because it's decent, like
Yeah.
other people are making stuff too and just putting it out there and it may not be in the same vein or as good as this and you should give it a shot. She said it in a way harsher way, but that's what she was getting at.
Being from the Bay, you talked about the Bay earlier. Seeing that evolution personally from the artists who made the music and told their stories to the way, expression has changed in the Bay and moved through cycles. Was there any Bay Area album or albums growing up that pushed your pen specifically during those formative years?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think a lot of stuff that's pretty underground. Like there was this group, The Attic, who used to be in Oakland all the time. And I used to listen to their stuff nonstop. And there was just a lot of folks in the community who were making rap who like I didn't know if they were big on a larger scale. There was no like Instagram, Facebook, or anything at the time, but to me, they were like really big because they were doing the thing that I wanted to do myself. So I would say The Attic, I would say Zumbi and Zion I, rest in
Nice.
peace. Hyro. I feel like I got into Hyro a little bit later. Those are
At which
shit.
point?
I feel like I was kind of already out of high school by the time I really, really listened to Hyro for real. Like, I feel like there's so many instances where my dad was trying to put me on hip hop that's legendary in Oakland. And I was just like, like when somebody tries to put you on, especially like a older figure, a parent or something, sometimes you don't have to listen just for the sake of being difficult. And that was definitely me.
Do you regret that? Not being up on Hyro as early as your dad was?
Not really Hyro, but like there's some things where I'm like, dang, my dad definitely was trying to put me on and I just didn't listen.
Jazz was in that conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah, jazz for sure.
Talk about that relationship, getting into jazz via your dad. How did that hone and help develop your skills?
Well, like I talk about this all the time. So if people are familiar with my music, they know that I come from a lineage of my grandfather was a drummer, jazz musician, and expat. He lived in France for 30 years. And my dad, who is his first son, is a radio host and jazz lover and, Black American music lover and everything. So I grew up with access to so much music that I probably was a little spoiled by it. I didn't really, or I took it for I took advantage of it. I didn't really notice everything that was around me at the time. I was at the radio stations with my dad all the time and listening, going to gigs all the time. I was in jazz clubs when I was like barely old enough to sit at the bar. So I think that influence has seeped in me and I haven't been able to escape it. But, my dad is someone who you walk into his house and he has records everywhere. Like he has CDs in kitchen cabinets, so there was no way that I could have escaped the music.
Growing up, who were some of those artists being played in your household?
In my household, that's a good question. So many folks, like the classics, so many Miles Davis records, Charlie Parker, like everybody. But for me, the ones that I picked and stole from my dad and mom's collection and took in my CD player were all hip hop, you know, like my mom had a Fugees record that I stole, listened to nonstop. Queen Latifah, actually, Black Rain, my mom also had that record. So shout out to my mom because those two records really were influential to me. A lot of reggae like Peter Tosh and Bob Marley projects, and I was really drawn to those. I feel like a little bit of everything here and there. And then my dad would get these records in the mail from companies and labels and stuff, and I would always take the hip hop one. So I listened to a lot of really underground, sometimes didn't even make it on the radio groups, you know. So,
very dope. Almost a genre cocktail.
Yeah, exactly.
Fast forward into now, let's talk about this latest album, your most recent project, of course, Morning Dew, some of which you started writing and recording as far back as 2019 in Crown Heights.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the Bay, I'm curious as to how much navigating between Oakland and Brooklyn, how much does that inform your experiences writing this project? And are you leaning into one place over the other with this project specifically in terms of direction?
No, I feel like I don't see it that way. I feel like in my style, in Morning Dew, but also in other projects, you can hear both cities, which I make it a point to keep both. Like Oakland is my home forever and ever. You can never take that out of me. But Brooklyn also made me kind of the rapper who I am. So I feel like I have both influences in this record for sure. I feel like the most Oakland track on the song features one of my homies who actually is from the Bay, from San Francisco, Omi the homie, the song Petals. And for me, it has a lot of Oakland bounce in it, so I can see that.
What was the starting point for this album?
The starting point was just wanting to make something new. I felt like I was stuck. Going over to Dane Zone, who executive produced this record with me, going to his house, which is like a few blocks from my own house, where the studio is, and just like wanting to make something. I think the first song that we made was Cope. And it's a really, you know, Cope is a really sad-ish song. It's a really emotional song. So I feel like the space that I was in was just, I was pretty sad. And I was, you know, thinking about mourning and all these things. And I didn't have the concept of the record yet. It was just a one-off. We didn't even know we were making a record, really. We were just making songs to make songs, you know. And then kind of everything just built around that. I took breaks from this project, a lot of breaks, and made other things. You know, Double Down was made in between this, and a lot of other things to distract me from the weight of Morning Dew, I think. But the starting point was definitely Cope, for sure.
It's very much a foundational record for setting the pace for this album, isn't it? In terms of the concept.
Yeah, it is.
What have you learned from making music to cope? And how does coping help you to make a song like Cope?
It's hard because with making, like, I know that making music in general is good for me. It relieves stress. Like, it helps me put things down that I normally wouldn't be able to, and just makes things that people can relate to, because at the end of the day, we're going through a lot of the same things. But it's hard for me to remember that in moments that I'm not doing it, you know? So I feel like when I'm forced to make something and then I'm like, feel a sense of relief, I have to remind myself that music did that for me. You know, it's hard to, when I'm actually going through something, remember that I can take time out and like write something down, process it. It doesn't have to be a song. It can be a song. But when it does help me to cope, I try really hard to remain present in that moment and remember that moment for future moments when I am looking for ways to help myself go through with whatever I'm going through.
So many of these songs, they do sound like they come from this place of terrifying your mind whilst, I guess, also opening up your heart simultaneously. Do you ever feel like your expectations of yourself and your intentions to communicate with audiences about these themes, do they ever overlap and compete with your own mental space?
I don't think they do, because I know this is a really cliche thing to say, but it's so true. Like, these songs are for me, you know. These songs are not for for people. They just happen to, like, I just put them out because I want to, but I make them for me. And even in the moment where I'm making a song and I'm like, this song is tight, like people are gonna really vibe to it, lyrically, it's for me. Like a lot of my songs are just me processing things that I've been needing to process, and I enjoy that other people like to listen to it. I enjoy making stuff that people are like, I don't really know if I like this, because at the end of the day, I love it. Or sometimes I hate it, but I needed to make it. Yes. Sure. My favorite method be to smoke, it's killing me though. Tell me what is it, my enemy list is so long. If I did, what can go wrong? Sometimes I sip to trip and trance of chance, don't overstand my stance. My favorite method be to smoke, it's killing me though. Tell me what is it, my enemy list is so long. If I did, what can go wrong? Sometimes I sip to trip and chance of chance, don't overstand my stance. My favorite method be to smoke, it's killing me though. Tell me what is in my enemy list is so long. If I did, what can go wrong? Sometimes I sip to trip and chance a chance to overstand my stance. Yeah, well, I started this in 2019, which was before the pandemic, and then that happened. And everyone was kind of at a standstill, not knowing what to do, having to be in our houses. A lot of mental health things came up for folks. And as someone who was already struggling with my mental health, pretty much my whole life, it kind of just exacerbated things, like put a really, really just like huge mirror to things and was like, oh, these are all the things you're going through, and people are going through in general. So my own mental health and how it was affected with not being able to just live how we were used to living, however hard and fast that may have been. My mom was sick during the time, like with cancer for the second time. She's in remission now, clap it up. But there was a lot of personal things that I went through during that time that just I was sad about, and I was in mourning, and I was trying to relieve some of that heaviness on my body, and therefore affecting people around me, from interacting with me. So
was there a particular moment on this album that was most hard to write or rhyme for whatever reasons?
I don't know about hard, but I think a song that's actually not that lyrically heavy, but the song with Just Moni, Prayer Posture, was really emotional for me to write, not only because of what I'm talking about on the song. On the song I'm talking about paying homage to the folks in front of me, and the folks in my past, my ancestors and such, but also, and not stressing on the material wealth of the moment and them kind of laughing at me that I'm stressed about that. But that song features Just Moni, who I talked about earlier, who is one of my longest friends, and also was produced by Nelson Bandela, who is also one of my longest friends and collaborators in New York. And I felt like for us three to be on a song, it was really beautiful for me. It was kind of the first time, even though we've all known each other for 10 years, that we've kind of made something together. So just that fact, and me knowing all three of us very deeply and the type of things that we all go through in our lives, it felt really emotional to me, even though I probably only wrote 8 bars to that song.
What's the story behind Weeping Waltz with Cavalier?
Weeping Waltz, Unjust, if you know him, he produced 30 Bag, a whole EP with me. I have millions of beats by Unjust that I love. Weeping Waltz was one of those that I've held on to for a long time. I was like, I have to have this. I have to have it. I have to have it. I don't know where it's going to fit, but I have to have it. And it's such an off, weird beat, that I didn't know how to rap to it for a long time. And I sent it to Cav because I've been trying to collaborate with Cavalier for years. He's one of my favorite rappers. Shout out to Private Stock. But when I sent it to Cav and he sent me his verse back, I was just blown away. I was kind of just like, I don't know how he rapped that. Like, I couldn't hear the pocket that he heard at all. I had to listen to his verse 4 or 5 times before I actually got it. And then, yeah, I wrote my verse and really just wrote it about what I was going through that day, which was just like waking up extremely early all the time and being with my homies and all that type of stuff. And it turned out to be one of my favorite songs on the record. So I'm super thankful for Cavalier for doing that.
Walk me through the kind of voices in your head when you're listening to a beat and considering writing and recording to that said beat.
Well, if it's a beat that I love, immediately, like a lot of times rhythms will come to me and I'll kind of know where I want to fit on the beat. Other times there's beats that I love that I don't know how to get on at all and I can't hear it. And then in those instances, I kind of trick myself into thinking about a rapper that I love and how I think they would rap on it. And in that, I kind of find my own thing because I'm able to think of someone else who's not me. But then it really is just me, you know, because I'm just trying to imitate something, but I can never really imitate it fully. So it's just kind of like a mind trick that I play on myself sometimes when I can't write to things.
That's interesting. You've talked about how you're inspired by manipulating beats, whether that be how you choose to produce a beat or how you choose to flip a beat lyrically. Can you maybe share any insight into how the colors in these sonics manipulated your emotions and I guess amplified your narrative when you were writing these songs?
Yeah, I mean, for a song like Petals, you know, Petals is so bright that it's like just colorfully a bright song. So much so that it made me a little uncomfortable because I feel like the rest of the project is really dark or kind of a neutral color. So yeah, with a song like that, 9 times out of 10, you want to go with the way it feels to you or the color it feels to you. Like it feels bright. So I wanted to write about something that felt kind of bright to me, you know, which was just that song is just like me like being braggadocio, rapping to rap, you know, but I feel like I needed that a lot. So I feel like 9 times out of 10, the music really just dictates where the song is gonna go. Like Cope, the Cope beat is really pretty ominous and a little sad itself. So I feel like it kind of lent itself to what I wrote.
I've heard you say that there's two ways for the most part that you listen to music, and that's either driving or listening through your headphones. How much does whipping play a role in consuming the way you hear production when you're driving and listening to these instrumentals?
A lot, man. I miss listening to music in the car all the time because I don't drive in New York as much as I could or should or want to. But listening to music in the car changes everything. I feel like right now I make a lot of headphone music and train music, which is cool. It's its own thing. But car music to me is irreplaceable because I grew up in such a car culture. We were all driving by 15 and Mac Dre was huge and like the hyphy movement was huge when I had a car. So all those sounds just came at me in such a different way and with such different, when I think about those times, I have such like positive feelings about those times because I was always in the car with a lot of friends and a lot of homies and just listening to the newest shit from the Bay and all Bay music. You know, we didn't listen to anything besides like Bay Area hip hop at that time, which was just super hyphy influence, like Keek the Sneak, you know, the Team, E40, of course, and all those people. So yeah, I miss having a car.
Let's talk about whipping. How does whipping come about? What's the story behind that track?
Whipping, me and Logi, J Words, we were all just hanging out one day in New York, and I happened to have my best friend / manager's car, which is a really nice car. And we were just driving around New York. We weren't even planning to make any songs. We had come from an event, and J Words actually was the one like, we should make something, guys. Like, if you know J Words, she's always trying to make something. And me and Logi were just like, we don't really know. And she was like, come on, it will be a dream come true. So she really forced our hand in that. Shout out to her because it ended up being really special, and I love Logi, and I can't wait to collaborate with him again.
Were there many tracks on this album that started off with a vibe like that and you didn't know the direction, didn't anticipate the direction at first, and they kind of just like were born out of that experience?
Yeah, I would say in general, that's kind of how I approach making music. I don't think that I come into making music or songs with themes. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to write about this today,
Right.
Kind of just, it happens, whatever happens.
What is it that Jay Words pulls from you that's different from any other producer?
Jay Words, she's very sure of herself, which I appreciate. She has beats that she knows are great, and she also has beats that she doesn't think are great that I think are great, and she lets me have them. Sometimes producers don't even, they're like, nah, like I don't like this one, but if that happens with me and Jay Word, she's like, all right, whatever, you can still have it. And that happened so many times. On our project Double Down, there were beats that I chose, even on Morning Dew, the beat for Amen, I believe, either Amen or Smug, one of them, she was like, like I don't really like it. And then
really?
Now, like, I love
Amen?
it. I believe it was Amen, or maybe
Wow.
I think it was Amen, because me and Masai, Jay Words had sent the beat to both me and Masai, and I was like, I want it, and Jay Words was like, no, Masai took it. And then months later, I was like, what's up with that beat? And then Jen was like, I don't really want it. I don't really like it anymore. And I was like, I have to have it. I have to have it. I have to have it. So that's how.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Do you have any specific memories from recording that song, Amen?
That's a good question. Yeah, kind of. I remember Dane being like, he's such an engineer and producer that he doesn't really listen to my raps when I'm rapping him. He's more listening to the sound, And I remember after recording, he was like, "Oh, okay, like you're on something today. You're onto something today. Like that wasn't just regular, Because we'll have sessions where we'll just record and we don't really talk about what we made immediately after. But that one was like, oh, okay. Like he knew I was serious,
He knew you had one, right.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about making Stone Soup with More Mother?
Stone Soup was probably the last song that we made on this record. My friend Matt Evans played the drums and sent them over, and we chopped them up, and it was super last minute. And Dane had a piano loop that he was just playing, and I was like, I love this piano. Like, please, please let me have this. And we just chopped up some of the drums, or Dane did, that Matt played, and that was kind of it. Like, send it to More Mother. She sent it back, and that was kind of it. It was just, I love that song. I probably play that song the most. I think the beat, the production is crazy, and I'm still in love with how the beat switches up,
They keep telling me to let it go. They keep telling me to let it go. But I know
another thought, let me throw a dart, verbal stalk, high arc, Carol Walker, color chart. I see horizons, throw back they violence. Black woman, equalizer of the nonsense. Yes, we was once all dreams, giving birth to light beams. Dark skin Latifah and Hakeem's. The blacker the berry, the deeper the portal. Flash you out of order, but in due time, BQF shift timelines. Non-binary fluid line across the belly. Illuminati Machiavelli. In 7 days I appear so bomb early. Hail Mary, you can't help me. I'm grown, I've been known to roam. Benny in the jets, cold sweats in the matrix. You hated to love it, you never above it. You hate to love it, you never above it. You're never above it.
Left out, left back, say it with your chest out. Think I left the bread out, shit just look stale now. Bet you it's a still base, nothing like a home place. Sipping on some soup, help for the bone break. When I get back here, feeling like the wrong place. Feeling like the wrong place. Left out, left back, say it with your chest out.
I was really surprised to see that you had named one of the songs Yes, Yes, Yes. Of course, that's one of your ad libs.
Yeah.
Where does that ad lib come from? I don't think I've ever heard you speak about that.
That's a good question. I haven't ever spoken about that. And I stole the ad lib from a mentor of mine, Lauren Whitehead. I saw her hosting a show and I was mad. I was a teenager and this is at the time when everyone was like, yeah, you know, yeah. Like that was the ad lib. I was how to get people's attention. And I remember her just be like, yes, like with a hard S. And I was like, I don't know, it just stood out for me in that moment. And I was like, I'm taking that. I'm jacking that.
It feels real West Coast.
Yeah, word.
It feels real West Coast.
It is. It definitely is. I definitely put my West Coast thing on it. But now I can't escape it, you know.
Do you have any favorite memories making this album?
I really enjoyed making Petals. Omi the homie came to New York and came to my studio and we just hung out, which felt really good. It feels really good to be around people from home in New York. And another really good moment in this record, I think, I mean, there were a lot of good moments. I think there were a lot of moments with Dane. You know, this is our third record together, and I'm sure we'll make stuff together in the future. But for me, it kind of felt like it was kind of a culmination of us working together because he has moved to LA. So there were so many moments where I was just looking at where we had come from making the Tree Act and kind of taking moments to be appreciative of like how far we've come and stuff. So I think making this record, there were so many moments where I was just like, okay, I think this is a thing. I don't know. We're going to throw all these songs together and see what happens. I'm not sure. And then when it was finally done and I could listen to it all the way through without cringing, and I was like, okay, cool. We made something cool, you know?
What's next for you?
I have an EP that I recorded with Swarby that is done. Don't know when that's coming out yet, but that's next. That's on the next list. So, and Swarby's an amazing producer and just musician in person. So I'm really excited for that one.
Obsessions with all of my endings. My back went forth with the bending. My blades ain't made for the blending. Tread on trails while we trending. Beginning. Obsessions with all of my endings. My back went forth with the bending. My blades ain't made for the blending. Tread on trails while we trending. Beginning. Obsessions with all of my endings. My back went forth with the bending. My blades ain't made for the blending. Tread on trails while the trending. Tread on trails while the trending. See the end before it began, a seasonal trend. Seasons greeting for the deepest men. Been here before, my friend. Should we explore as friends? Ignore the sins. Does life seem short? Speaking less, save retorts. Stems that all my limbs seem coarse, and you seem courses, of course. From your high horse, or reply when I'm higher, my voice is.
I wish I could show my appreciation for this
podcast.
I wish I could respond to it somehow, or be notified in the future when
Fly Fidelity
updates, because it's so great. But I don't think there's a way I can do any of those things.
Uh-oh, you're wrong.
Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud and never miss an episode. Find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.
My peoples, are you with me where you at?